Onnen y Esteladine, Ukevin Estelanim. Imagine you're an educational charity dedicated to the work of one of the world's greatest authors. Imagine that such is your standing, that said author supported your charity by becoming its president, and that his daughter still serves as vice president. Imagine that since your founding in 1969, ladies, you've hosted scores of important figures, scholars, artists, and researchers all invested in the lengthy works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Now imagine that you're going to hold a seminar where every speaker will trash the man and his work. I give you the Tolkien Society, a group that's been around for decades and has supported Tolkien and his legacy until now. Because now, they're getting woke. They've got this upcoming seminar in July, and I'm just going to read what's on their site about the event, and it's so important that you look at the screen so you see that I'm not making a single thing up. This is not a joke. Everything that's going to come out my mouth will be from this site. I swear on the precious. Here we go. Quote, Summer Seminar, Tolkien and Diversity Call for Papers. While interest in the topic of diversity has steadily grown within Tolkien research, it is now receiving more critical attention than ever before. Spurred by recent interpretations of Tolkien's creations and the cast list of the upcoming Amazon show The Lord of the Rings. Okay, I'm gonna have to interrupt because it's not The Lord of the Rings. That happens in the Third Age. The show is about the second, and you know what? Never mind. It is crucial we discuss the theme of diversity in relation to Tolkien. How do adaptations from Tolkien's works, from film and art to music, open a discourse on diversity within Tolkien's works and his place within modern society? Beyond his secondary world, diversity further encompasses Tolkien's readership and how his texts exist within the primary world. Who is reading Tolkien? How is he understood around the globe? How many of these new readings enrich current perspectives on Tolkien? None of them. Literally none of them. We've had nearly a decade of this progressive whining about more diversity and more representation, and rarely can any of them come up with a rational argument, let alone add any enrichment to any work. They're like the One Ring. They're altogether evil, and they bring out the worst in people. It continues, quote, Representation is now more important than ever, and Tolkien's efforts to represent, or ignore, particular characteristics requires further examination. No, it doesn't. Additionally, how a character's identity shapes and influences its place within Tolkien's secondary world still requires greater attention. No, it doesn't. This seminar aims to explore the many possible applications of diversity within Tolkien's works, his adaptations, and his readership. Translation: the seminar will trash Tolkien as racist, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, a colonizer, and an uber-Catholic. Don't take my word for it. Here are the topics they want to discuss. Quote, Papers may include, but are not limited to, representations of Tolkien's works, race, gender, sexuality, disability, class, religion, age, etc. Tolkien's approach to colonialism and post-colonialism, adaptations of Tolkien's work, diversity and representation in Tolkien academia and readership, identity within Tolkien's works, alterity in Tolkien's works. You know what? I was wrong. I missed a few. Also, alterity means otherness, for those who are confused. So submission date came and passed, and now the papers are complete, so they listed them on the site. And I'm going to read the titles, and again, you need to look at the screen because these are 100% real. These are not jokes, these are real. I swear to a Luvatar, they're real. Are you sitting down? Well then sit down further. Here we go. Quote, Gondor in Transition, a brief introduction to the transgender realities in The Lord of the Rings. The Problems of Pain, portraying physical disability in the fantasy of J.R.R. Tolkien. The Burnt Hand teaches most about fire, applying traumatic stress and ecological frameworks to narratives of displacement and resettlement across cultures in Tolkien's Middle-earth. The Invisible Other, Tolkien's dwarf women and the feminine... Oh, just breathe. You keep breathing. Just breathe. The Invisible Other, Tolkien's dwarf women and the feminine lack, projecting Indian myths, culture, and history onto Tolkien's worlds. The Losoth, indigeneity, identity, and anti-racism. For those confused, the Losoth are a group of people from the north who are kind of like Eskimos. the problematic perimeters of Elrond half-elven and Ronald English Catholic, hearkening to the other, Athrobeth Finrod on Andreth. That's about a chapter in the Silmarillion where Finrod, an elf, and Andreth, a human woman, talk about the differences between elves and men and their different fates. As you can see, it's nothing but a woke word salad, and it gets worse. Quote, "Pardon me, Saruman? The queer in Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings." It's always the villains, isn't it? Desire of the Ring, an Indian academic's adventures in her quest for the perilous realm. Queer atheists, agnostics, and animists. Oh my, it's not even the right franchise. Hidden Visions, iconographies of alterity in Soviet bloc illustrations for The Lord of the Rings. Questioning the cast in The Lord of the Rings and its multiple Chinese translations. Stars Less Strange, an analysis of fanfiction and representation in the Tolkien fan community. I'm sure that's not going to be hot garbage. Something Mighty Queer, destabilizing cis hetero. Shit, it's so retarded. It's so retarded. They're just making up words now. Here we go. Something Mighty Queer, destabilizing cis hetero and heteronormativity in the works of Tolkien. In English, this means trashing the idea of the traditional family. Translation as a means of representation and diversity in Tolkien scholarship and fandom, meaning you're going to change Tolkien's words to make his stories fit your bigoted politics. Riveting. Just riveting concepts that have absolutely zero to do with Tolkien's work. We know what he intended. His son Christopher pored over his father's notes for years, literally looking at the erased pencil writings under the ink final copies to map out what Tolkien wrote before he rewrote it. If Tolkien were remotely concerned about sexual orientation, ableism, colonialism, representation, or whatever dog whistles the far left likes to use, we would find it in his writings and his letters. It's not there because he wasn't thinking about any of this shit. These papers aren't about examining Tolkien's work. They're about trashing it and him and reframing everything he wrote under the lens of progressive theories. When you look at the titles of the papers, only two of them seem to be relatively apolitical. Desire of the Ring and Hidden Visions. All the rest sound like little more than woke propaganda. I mean, the idea of destabilizing the traditional family within Tolkien's works. What, are we supposed to assume that Luthien or Arundel were gay? It's somehow wrong or problematic that Tolkien wrote about characters having mothers and fathers and wanting to start families? You do realize that most of the prominent characters with established families have horrible ends. It's not like being part of a family protected them. Or how about the idea of altering Tolkien's words when translating them to make them so-called more diverse and representative? I've said this several times and I'll say it again. One simply does not go around changing Tolkien's words. He was a linguist. If a word was there, he meant it to be there. You don't get to change his words to make them fit your kooky politics. Now, in fairness, I haven't read these papers. I don't know any of the authors, but based on my experience dealing with people like them, I bet that you could change Tolkien's name to Stephen King, Tolstoy, or Twain, and it wouldn't even make a difference because the arguments will have nothing to do with the work itself. That's just a red herring. This is really about SJWs pushing their political agenda by labeling anything created by white men as inherently bad, flawed, and evil, and they've managed to get the Tolkien Society, supported by Tolkien himself, to let them do this to this man and his work. This travesty is supposed to happen on July 3rd and 4th. It's going to be live streamed on their YouTube page, so I'll watch and see how many things I get wrong. I doubt I'm going to need more than one hand to keep count, so the other will be free for the obligatory face palming. It'd be interesting though to see if anybody will push back against any of the woke nonsense. Please let someone there have the intestinal fortitude to stand up for Tolkien. I doubt it's going to happen, but maybe someone will find their courage and defend the man and his work from these hateful bigots. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.